The morning of April 18, 2016, began with the low rumble of thunder echoing over Midlothian, Texas. The streets were drenched from a relentless downpour that had persisted through the night, a rare storm for April. As most of the town remained tucked away in the comfort of their homes, one person was already awake, lacing up her shoes, preparing to face the storm, not as a victim, but as a committed instructor eager to lead her early morning fitness boot camp. Terri Leann, Missy Bevers had always been a woman of determination. Born on August 9, 1970, in Graham, Texas, she exuded a drive that few could match. She married Brandon Bevers in 1998, and together they raised 3 daughters in the suburban town of Red Oak. As a mother, she was devoted, as a wife, steadfast, and as a fitness trainer, she was admired by her students and peers. Her work with Camp Gladiator had earned her local recognition, with her classes often filled to capacity, held in public parks or parking lots, depending on weather conditions. On the evening of April 17, foreseeing the storm ahead, Missy took to social media to inform her students that the next morning's class would be moved indoors, specifically to the Creekside Church of Christ, a familiar backup location in Midlothian. This choice would ultimately seal her fate. Hours later, before the clock struck 4 a.m., the church, normally a place of peace and spiritual reflection, harbored a presence that did not belong. Surveillance footage inside the building recorded an eerie figure making its way through the darkened halls. Clad in what appeared to be full police tactical gear, the individual moved with a peculiar gait, methodically opening doors, breaking glass, and wandering from room to room. At times, the movement seemed deliberate, at others, almost aimless, as though they were buying time or waiting for something, or someone. At 4:18 a.m., Missy Bevers arrived at the church, entering through the main doors. What occurred in the minutes that followed remains one of Texas' most baffling and disturbing unsolved mysteries. By 5 a.m., a member of her boot camp class arrived, only to be met with a scene of horror. Missy's lifeless body lay inside the church. Emergency services were summoned, and officers quickly cordoned off the building, turning what had been a workout venue into an active crime scene. Missy had been murdered, though the precise details of the attack have never been publicly released in full. Investigators confirmed she died from puncture wounds, believed to have been inflicted with a tool consistent with those used in tactical or construction work. The brutality of the attack suggested rage, but the absence of clear motive left more questions than answers. Authorities pored over the surveillance footage, scrutinizing the strange figure caught on camera. From their attire, it initially appeared to be a law enforcement officer, but it became quickly evident that the uniform and gear were likely fake. The heavy-set person moved with an unusual, almost theatrical limp, leading experts to believe the gait could have been staged as a deliberate misdirection. Still, gender, identity, and motive remained a mystery. Adding to the complexity was the timing. The storm, the early hour, and Missy's change of plans meant only someone with inside knowledge, or someone monitoring her, could have known when and where she'd be alone. Investigators considered every angle: random attack, personal vendetta, burglary gone wrong. Yet the evidence didn't comfortably fit any theory. The lack of forced entry raised suspicions of premeditation. The attacker was already inside the church when Missy arrived, suggesting they had entered earlier and waited. That level of planning implied knowledge of her routine. Interviews were conducted with those closest to her: family, friends, colleagues. Her husband, Brandon, was out of state on a fishing trip at the time, a detail confirmed through various records and corroborated alibis. Still, no one was ruled out early on. In the days that followed, the footage of the mysterious figure dressed in pseudo-police gear was released to the public. It went viral almost instantly. Viewers were disturbed by the methodical way the individual moved, their anonymity amplified by the cold indifference of their actions. Tips flooded in, but none yielded concrete leads. Forensics examined every possible clue: shoe prints, partial DNA, the layout of the building, but the answers remained elusive. The community was shaken. Creekside Church, a cornerstone for many Midlothian families, had become the backdrop of a grim murder. Fear and suspicion rippled through the town. Women who once walked alone in the early morning now traveled in groups. Church attendance dwindled. Rumors spread like wildfire: jealous rivals, jilted lovers, mistaken identity. None substantiated. Behind the headlines, Missy's family faced a private torment. Her daughters, robbed of their mother, were left to navigate their grief under the harsh scrutiny of a case that had become national news. Brandon Bevers, though cooperative with law enforcement, faced online speculation, as was often the case in high-profile investigations. But no evidence pointed to his involvement. Theories abounded, but facts remained scarce. Despite resources poured into the case, months passed with no arrests, no named suspects, and no publicly known breakthroughs. The only certainty was that Missy Bevers had been targeted. The setting, the timing, the preparation, all hinted at a killer who knew exactly what they were doing. As the first year came and went, Midlothian was left with a haunting question: who walks into a church before dawn, dressed in fake police gear, and murders a woman preparing to help others better themselves, then disappears without a trace? Missy Bevers' murder was no longer just a local tragedy. It was a mystery that had gripped the nation, and yet, it was only the beginning. In the days that followed the brutal killing of Missy Bevers, grief and confusion blanketed the community of Midlothian like the storm clouds that had loomed that morning. Her murder was not only senseless but carried out with a level of premeditation that disturbed even the most seasoned investigators. The image of the heavily disguised intruder stalking the church hallways before dawn haunted the public and tormented law enforcement, who were still no closer to identifying the person behind the mask. The surveillance video had raised far more questions than it answered. Why had the killer been inside the church long before Missy arrived? What were they searching for as they opened doors and broke glass? And why dress in police tactical gear? Analysts suggested it could have been a method to disguise the perpetrator's physical features or gender, but there was also speculation it was meant to mislead or create hesitation if Missy encountered them, momentary confusion that would cost her life. One detail repeatedly scrutinized was the suspect's distinctive walk. The person's gait appeared to include a slight outward turn of one foot and a stiff, swaying movement in their stride. Law enforcement reached out to medical professionals, orthopedic specialists, and gait analysts in hopes of narrowing down the suspect pool based on that irregular movement. The effort produced no definitive answers, only educated guesses. Public tips poured in. Some viewers believed they recognized the stance or stride. Others claimed the gear looked like items sold to civilians online, while a few insisted the suspect had to be female based on body proportions. Theories flooded Facebook groups and Reddit forums, some thoughtful and others wildly speculative. Still, the Midlothian Police Department urged the public to avoid jumping to conclusions. The uniformed figure remained a phantom, seen but unidentified, present yet unreachable. Behind the scenes, investigators cast a wide net. Cell phone records were subpoenaed. Digital footprints were tracked. Missy's text messages, emails, and social media activity were reviewed in exhaustive detail. Her phone revealed what many considered a possible lead, a string of messages from a person Missy reportedly didn't know well, described as flirtatious or suggestive. Investigators acknowledged the existence of the messages but did not confirm whether they were relevant to the case. Authorities also looked closely at Missy's personal life, seeking any hint of conflict that might lead to a motive. Her marriage to Brandon Bevers came under scrutiny. The couple had faced challenges, as many do, and some close to them described periods of tension. However, police stressed that Brandon had a solid alibi, placing him out of state during the murder. He was cooperative and passed a polygraph. Still, the public focus on him and others in Missy's circle intensified the emotional strain. Brandon's father, Randy Bevers, also drew attention when it was revealed that he had brought a blood-stained shirt to a dry cleaner shortly after the murder. The shirt, a white long-sleeved garment with various splatters, was described by Randy as having been soiled by an injured dog. Investigators tested the garment, and results showed the blood was indeed canine. While the matter was ultimately cleared, it highlighted the kind of intense scrutiny anyone connected to Missy now faced. The Bevers family endured not only the loss of a wife and mother but also invasive suspicion. Each development, whether relevant or not, was dissected publicly. The police continued to affirm that they were following up on all leads and that no family members were considered suspects at the time. But the pressure was relentless. Mourners sought justice, speculators demanded answers. One of the more bizarre elements in the investigation was the possibility that the killer had scoped out the church beforehand. Surveillance cameras showed no sign of forced entry the morning of the attack, and investigators theorized that the suspect might have entered using a key or through an unlocked door. If true, it implied a deeper familiarity with the church's layout or security routines. Detectives interviewed current and former church members, fitness clients, and other individuals who had access to the building. They also explored whether the killer might have participated in one of Missy's boot camps or observed them from a distance. Surveillance from nearby businesses was reviewed to determine whether any vehicles or suspicious individuals had been in the area before or after the murder. Unfortunately, this angle, too, produced limited results. The Midlothian Police Department, though assisted by the FBI and Texas Rangers, was battling a case where forensic evidence was scarce. No fingerprints, no weapon, and no usable DNA had been retrieved from the scene. It was a near-perfect crime in terms of physical traceability, executed with precision and forethought. The killer had come prepared, armed with knowledge, concealment, and timing. In time, the investigators began to explore whether Missy may have known her attacker. The lack of panic or signs of struggle in the surveillance footage suggested the ambush had happened fast, or that Missy may not have realized she was in danger until it was too late. The idea that she might have recognized the person underneath the tactical gear added another chilling layer to the crime. 6 months after the murder, the case remained unsolved, and frustration was mounting. Law enforcement appealed to the public once again, re-releasing the surveillance footage and asking anyone with information, no matter how minor, to come forward. They believed that someone, somewhere, had seen something or knew something but hadn't yet come forward out of fear or loyalty. To the community's disappointment, no viable suspects were ever named publicly. There were no arrests, no breakthroughs, and no resolution. Missy's murder remained a painful mystery. Her family, still reeling from her loss, offered a monetary reward for information leading to an arrest. The church resumed its normal operations, but the trauma of what had happened within its walls lingered. The image of the lone figure, wandering through the dark corridors of Creekside Church, persisted like a shadow that couldn't be chased away. No one knew if the person was watching the investigation unfold, walking freely among the community, or perhaps even laughing at their ability to disappear without a trace. The only certainty was that whoever had done this had planned it with care, and had every intention of vanishing. As weeks turned into months, one truth became more apparent: Missy Bevers had not been a random victim. Her killer had known exactly when and where she would be, dressed in a costume designed to confuse and conceal, slipping into the church while the rest of the world slept. That morning, under the cover of thunder, someone committed a murder that would echo for years, unanswered and unpunished. Months turned into years, yet the question that haunted Midlothian remained unanswered: who killed Missy Bevers? Despite exhaustive investigation efforts, dozens of interviews, public appeals, and multiple forensic tests, no suspect was ever named. The chilling figure caught on church security footage, clad head to toe in tactical gear, had simply vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of grief and confusion, but not a single definitive clue. In the months following Missy's murder, law enforcement focused heavily on the assumption that her killer had intimate knowledge of her schedule. This wasn't a chance encounter or opportunistic break-in. The killer had arrived at Creekside Church in the middle of a thunderstorm, before dawn, with intent and preparation. They appeared to have familiarity not only with the layout of the building but also the timeframe of her morning classes. That narrowed the field: someone who had observed her routines or had direct access to her class information. But familiarity didn't equate to guilt. As more than 1,400 tips flooded in, detectives followed every plausible lead, yet each one led to a dead end. Polygraph tests were administered to those closest to Missy. Devices were analyzed, GPS data reviewed, and alibis verified. The church's entrances and exits were reviewed countless times on video. Still, the person in the armor remained unidentified. To deepen the mystery, the security footage showed the suspect engaging in behavior that seemed, at times, aimless. Between breaking glass and opening doors, the figure displayed a strange, almost performative calmness, like they were walking through a checklist. Some believed these movements were staged, meant to obscure the true purpose: ambushing Missy. Others wondered if the destruction was intended to make it look like a robbery, though nothing of value was stolen. In 2017, a year after the murder, law enforcement revealed that the vehicle believed to belong to the suspect, a dark-colored 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima, had been spotted on surveillance footage driving near the church in the early hours of the morning. The car's unusual behavior, including circling the parking lot and turning off its lights before exiting the frame, raised suspicions. But the driver was never identified. The footage was too grainy to capture a license plate, and attempts to track down the owner based on make and model proved inconclusive. Another troubling development came when police disclosed that Missy's phone had held multiple LinkedIn messages that suggested a potential affair or unwanted attention. Although the messages weren't explicitly threatening, they introduced the idea that someone may have had deeper feelings for her, perhaps unreciprocated. Police pursued this lead vigorously, but despite speculation and public interest, no individual linked to those communications was ever charged or formally named a suspect. The focus then turned to the police-style outfit. It wasn't commercially available in the configuration seen in the video. The helmet, vest, gloves, and knee pads all seemed authentic, but they could have been assembled piece by piece from online retailers or military surplus stores. Still, authorities couldn't determine whether the gear was real tactical wear or a well-made costume. The level of detail, however, made it clear that significant planning went into concealing the killer's identity. As frustration mounted, so did community efforts to keep Missy's story alive. Her family, devastated by the lack of resolution, continued to speak out publicly. Brandon Bevers, still mourning his wife, remained adamant about his innocence and called for new eyes on the case. Missy's daughters, growing up without their mother, became symbols of the personal cost of unresolved violence. Billboards bearing Missy's image dotted highways, and a sizable reward remained unclaimed. Theories began to take root online, each more speculative than the last. Some fixated on the suspect's walk, comparing it to friends, family members, and even internet strangers. Others suggested elaborate conspiracies involving secret vendettas, romantic betrayal, or jealousy between fitness rivals. But without solid evidence, all conjecture remained in the realm of speculation. By 2019, 3 years after Missy's death, the official investigation had slowed significantly. The case remained open, but updates were few and far between. The absence of physical evidence, no weapon, no fingerprints, no DNA, had turned this homicide into one of the most baffling unsolved murders in Texas. Public interest persisted, but momentum had waned. What continued to haunt the community was the brazen nature of the crime. Missy Bevers wasn't killed in some remote alley or deserted road, she was attacked inside a place of worship, a location presumed safe. And her murder was carried out with the precision of someone who seemed to anticipate every detail. Even after all this time, the crime felt surreal. That someone could enter a church, murder a woman preparing for a fitness class, and then disappear forever, it defied logic. In the years that followed, anniversaries passed with somber remembrance. Candlelight vigils were held. The Bevers family expressed hope that advancements in technology, like improved facial recognition, genetic genealogy, or enhanced surveillance, might eventually uncover the truth. But as of 2025, the killer remains unidentified, and no arrests have been made. The Creekside Church of Christ has moved forward, but never fully recovered from the trauma. Members of the congregation still recall the eerie silence that hung in the air for weeks afterward, the sorrow that lingered in every pew. The boot camp classes, once a hub of energy and positivity, carry a heaviness that never fully lifted. For Missy's loved ones, closure has become a distant hope. They are left with memories of her bright spirit, her dedication to health and wellness, and her deep love for her daughters. They hold on to the belief that justice will come, that one day someone will speak, and the silence surrounding that April morning will finally break. Until then, the case of Missy Bevers remains one of the most chilling modern mysteries. A woman targeted in a sacred space, her life ended by a ghost in body armor, captured on video but never caught. A haunting reminder that even in a world of cameras and data, evil can still slip away unseen. Thank you for listening to Crime Echoes with Lewis. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more content like this.